Hey everyone, it's Ling,
Hi, I'm Zhuangyu.
and we all come from China, and we all come from the educational school. Today we will do this group assignment, and the topic of our assignment is the why feel powerless to breastfeeding and the theory of the planned behavior perspective on the psychosocial factor influencing breastfeeding. Why we choose this topic just because when we searching the information about the SDGs, we found that the zero hunger and good health and well-being are essential goals toward group sustainability and equality, and they include plenty. Increased rates of the inclusive breastfeeding is such an important step toward these goals, since breast milk will always be accessible, available, and give the best nutrition possible for children. Because of the time limitation, so we will briefly answer these three questions in this topic. First is, what's the relationship between the SDGs and the breastfeeding? Secondly, why feel powerless to breastfeeding? Third, how can we improve the further research? Then the Zhongyu will answer the first question. It is about what's the relationship between the SDG and the breastfeeding. Let's welcome the Zhongyu.
Okay, thank you. Um, I'm Zhuangyu. I'm in charge of the first research question. What's the relationship between Sustainable Development Goals and breastfeeding? Breastfeeding is closely related to SDGs. It is a critical first step on a child's path to a healthy future. But as a foundation for a child's future health and well-being, breastfeeding is also a critical element of worldwide development efforts to create a more healthy, prosperous, and sustainable planet. As a practical step towards protecting the survival and health of babies and women, breastfeeding is a central part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and is linked to many of the Sustainable Development goals. This slide shows the overall relationship between breastfeeding and the SDGs. Goals 1, 8, and 10 focus on ending poverty, promoting economic growth, and reducing inequities. Breastfeeding is associated with adding 302 billion US dollars annually in additional income to the world economy, nearly 0.5% of the world gross national industry. Goals 2 and 3 are concerned with hunger, health, and well-being. Breastfeeding is a vital source of nutrition and can save children's lives and contribute to improved health outcomes for children and mothers. Goal 4 is about education. The association between breastfeeding and higher IQs and educational attainment can contribute to efforts to achieving global learning targets. Goal 5 centers on gender equity. Breastfeeding is linked to critical equity issues including birth spacing and workplace rights. Goal 12 tackles sustainable consumptions. Breastfeeding does not require industry for production and is created and consumed with a minimum ecological footprint. As national governments throughout the world develop budgets and action plans to achieve the SDGs, breastfeeding should be a priority. Breastfeeding contributes not only to achieving many of the SDGs, it is also a critical component of the global strategy for women's, children's, and adolescents' health. Okay, that's all for my presentation.
And thanks, Zhongyu. And I'm the Ling. I will answer the question 2 and question 3. First, I will answer the question why feel powerless to breastfeeding. As the Zhongyu said, that the breastfeeding has a very positive role in the infant's health, mental health, mother-infant relationship. As we can see in the poster, there has a sentence, children who are inclusively breastfed for the first 6 months of life are 14 times more likely to survive than the non-breastfed children. Over the past 20 years, the WHO UNICEF has been committed to promoting the breastfeeding. But the benefits of the breastfeeding on baby health have been recognized by pregnant women, and the vast majority of pregnant women are willing to do the breastfeeding. However, it can be seen that the most mothers feel powerless during their breastfeeding. They're willing to do the breastfeeding, but they have to stop the breastfeeding uh, during the first 6 months, even they know the breastfeeding is a good thing. Many studies have shown that the most infant mothers stop breastfeeding on the ground of the lack of the milk. The psychosocial factor account for the vast majority. So the increase of the breastfeeding rates and the prolongation of the breastfeeding duration are currently the problem need to be improved in the field of the mother-infants in the world. As we said in the last point, psychosocial factors are the key factor lead to the powerless feeling of the breastfeeding. Numerous studies have explored the relationship between the psychosocial factor and the breastfeeding behavior under the framework of the theory of the planned behavior. We can call it TPB. There have a group of the researchers of the Hong Kong University. They done a meta-analysis of the classical breastfeeding TPB model. They found that the attitude, subjective norms, perceived behavior control, these three core variables were all significant predictors of the breastfeeding intention, and the intention has a strong predictor of the breastfeeding behavior. In the same time, the perceived behavior control reached a borderline level of the significance to breastfeeding behavior, or we can call that a prolonged time. But they also found that the classical model has a pretty limited explanatory power for the breastfeeding behavior. The founder of the TPB also emphasized that when using the TPB model to explain the different behavior, it can be explained and supplemented to different degrees on the basis of the above three core variables. And based on the plenty studies that they found that the behavior, attitude, subject norms, perceived behavior control, self-efficacy, normal room, and breastfeeding knowledge in the model can effectively explain the breastfeeding behavior. Regarding the attitude, there have two kinds of the attitude. The effective attitude. The effective attitude are far more effective than the instrumental attitude in explain the intention and the behavior. Regarding the subject norm, the norms from the older woman in the family and the hospital midwife both can affect the breastfeeding intention, but only from the former can significance predict the duration of the breastfeeding. Regarding the perceived control, it can directly predict the intention but cannot predict the prolonged time. Regarding the breastfeeding self-efficacy has a very strong positive practice effect on the intention and the prolonged time. And the moral wrong and the knowledge both can effectively plan the intention and the prolonged time. So as the result of the plenty study about the TPP model and the breastfeeding. The question 3 is, how can we improve the further research? There have 3 suggestions. First is, whether each influencing factor play a unique role in the extant TPP models, or whether there is an interaction between the influencing factor, has not yet been studied to clarify. Therefore, the integration and the ratification of the breastfeeding intent TPP model will become the direction of the further in-depth research on the breastfeeding behavior in the future. Secondly, powdered milk, the relationship between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law's generation restrictions and the other keywords related to the Asia cultural background need to be included in the breastfeeding TPP research. And a localized breastfeeding TPP model should be developed to effectively carry out the localization study on the promotion of the breastfeeding. Third is, in future intervention study, hospital doctor and midwives can increase the transmission of the self-interest belief and active choice information to promote the positive impact of the intervention on breastfeeding. So that's all the presentation about our group. That's as the references. Thank you for everyone. And 张宇.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
Yes. Okay.
Happy to cooperate with you.
Yeah, thank you. So just because we from a different part of the China, so we also can do the presentation online. Okay, let's start.
Okay, so
Thanks, Professor. Thanks, everyone.